All right, everyone. Welcome to the Net Plus session for today. This is the middle of July, so we have a couple more sessions for July. So we'll be talking primarily about the Net Plus exam today, Net 10-007. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, this is sort of it's a beginner and an intermediate exam at the same time. More of a beginner to networking concepts, an intermediate CompTIA exam. So it kind of falls between your A+ and your security, but it's also your main introduction to networking. So this exam, the emphasis here is troubleshooting. I call this the troubleshooting exam. You just get a ton of troubleshooting on it. Hopefully, if you're taking this exam, you did get a chance to take the A+ exam first. You get your introduction into the networking concepts there. And then once you get past A+, then you go into a little bit more depth when you get here. But for the most part, this is a pretty network heavy exam. There's a lot of troubleshooting in it. So the troubleshooting steps are very important to understand, very necessary to practice, so you can get a feel for it. And when you come down, you look at the knowledge domain here. Pretty well-rounded exam. There's no areas that are too overbearing. So you want to make sure you do your homework in each section. Okay, it's very important there. Network security is going to be something that's going to carry over for those of you that have Security Plus on your timeline. You're going to be taking that soon. A lot of concepts here that carry over to that. So, okay. All right. So today, normally what I do is, I'll draw up some questions and try to format them the way that they word the questions on the exam to give everyone some little practice. So I didn't do that in today's session. So we're going to do kind of like a free-for-all. We'll just open the floor, go around the table and see who has little questions on what areas, because I don't really have a area of focus today. So it kind of just depends on what you guys want to talk about, and then we'll just go from there. So with that said, I'll open up the floor for any questions or comments or concerns or whatever the case is. Someone may have taken the exam recently and have some comments on it. Those are welcome as well. If you do have a question about a concept or just a topic or something like that, what I would like for you to do is try to find it in the objectives and just reference the objective number. I think this is something that everyone should kind of get in the habit of doing, understanding, which objectives you're studying for. It gives you a better idea of not only the information that's under here, but the amount of the amount of depth that you need to go into the concepts, right? So for instance, for these portion protocols here, it's about explaining the purpose and use of them. So if you know what each of these are for or what they do, that should be enough when it comes to these portion protocols, right? Whereas on a Cisco exam, you may be asked to configure some of this stuff. Maybe they may ask you to open up the VTY lines and configure secure shell on a switch or something, right? Or telnet. They may ask you to create a DHCP pool, right? And so you can see that goes a little bit more deeper into the concept. Here it's just about understanding what's the purpose of DHCP, what's it for, what does it do? And so it's important to understand that, right? So when you have questions about something, you want to also understand what it is that you need to know. You don't want to overstudy for something. So with that said, does anyone have any networking concepts that they would like me to discuss? Maybe something
Yeah.
that Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a question. I've been doing networking for like over 10 years, but still when I'm studying for this, I've always had issues with like the OSI layer model and putting different what protocols belong at each one of those. And I guess that's kind of that area is kind of stressing me out a little bit more. I don't know if it's I don't know how big of a play that actually comes into for the exam.
Okay, that's a good question. So yeah, you're gonna see some stuff on the OSI model. I guarantee it. Okay. Um, but for the main things, like I was just saying, right? We want to find out what are we looking for, right? So certain devices. So if I were to say like a switch or a hub or a router, right? Um, those are operating at different levels. So you have to make sure that you can identify. All right, if I say, which layer is a router operating at, right? Um, that's going to be our layer 3 device, right? While the switch is our layer 2 device. And one thing that some people do get confused about is multi-layer switches, right? Because there are switches that operate at layer 2 and 3, right? It's a layer 3 switch, and it just boils down to it's a switch, right? That operates at layer 2, but it has layer 3 capability, so it's like a hybrid. Okay. If you see that on the exam, if they're asking you about a switch on the exam and they're saying, okay, which layer is it operating at? It always operates at layer 2, okay? Unless they tell you that it's a layer 3 switch or it's a multi-layer switch. If they tell you that, then obviously it's going to operate at multiple levels. But let me bring up a little document that could help you with this. Just a little visual thing, because this is it can be kind of hard to get down, because especially when you get into the TCP IP model, well, you blend a couple of these layers and then it just starts to kind of, like this one has 7, that one has 4. And so you start to blend these, and so it just kind of becomes like conjecture at that point. You're just like, okay, are we having a problem at layer 3 or layer 5, right? So let me point you towards a document that this actually is in the forum here. It's under the Net Plus section, and it's actually just a little graphic, and it will help clear some of that up. It'll help you kind of memorize what's going on. But there's one thing that it doesn't mention, and I'll bring that up in just a second, as soon as I find it. Let's see here. This was put in a long time ago, so it could be, oh, here we go. See, it's down by the bottom. Okay, so this is a little graphic, and you can see you have this little Ethernet cord here, right? And then you have the layers coming out here. So the first and foremost, what you want to make sure that you can do is you can put all these in order, either from top to bottom or bottom to top, whichever one works for you. Because that's going to be first and foremost. It could ask you a simple question like, you're having a problem at layer 4, which layer is that? So you have to be able to match these up with the number for one, and vice versa as well, right? You have to make sure that you can match up the actual layer with the number. All right, but let me see if I can make this bigger. So you can see here, you get this visual of what's going on at each layer, right? So the one thing that I mentioned that isn't here, that you want to make sure that you know and write this down if you have a pen handy or whatever. So at each of these levels, you're going to be dealing in different, in different transmitting things, right? So down here, you're going to have your bits, right? So layer 1 is going to be bits, right? It's like your physical connection stuff, right? So your stuff that's connecting to the wall, connecting to the actual devices, right? Your connectors, your Ethernet cords, all your serial connections, all that stuff, all right? So you got your bits, all right? Layer 2 It's going to be your frames. All right, this is when you're switching frames. This is going to be your switches and your hubs. Right, this is your MAC address and stuff. Right, and it tells you a little down here, you know, some of the stuff that's going on at each of these levels. That's why I brought this up. All right, so you have your bits, then you have your frames. You're switching frames down here. Okay, when you get up to 3, this is your packets. Right, this is your IP stuff. Right, this is when you're sending traffic from one network to another network. Right. So this is where you go from your local stuff here, right? Switching and stuff is locally. This is inside your LAN, right? So think of it as you live in the city, right? You call a cab, you can get just about anywhere in that city, right? But if you want to get out of that city, for the most part, I mean, some of us drive cross country, but for the most part, what we like to do is we like to go to the airport, right? So think of layer 2 as, you know, your local stuff, right? Your cabs or your Ubers or whatever, right? And then when you want to get international or you want to get outside of your locale, that's when you go to your layer 3, okay? That's packets. That's going to be your packets, right? And then when you get up here to layer 4, when you're in the transport layer, this is your segments, okay? So, sorry about that. Bits, frames, packets, segments, okay? Make sure that you know that you can get questions on that on the exam. All right, that's one thing that isn't here that they didn't mention here, but it can't come up. And then the other thing you want to do is this gives you a list of the stuff that's going on, right? A list of the protocols and the equipment that's being used. So this is a good thing to start with when it comes to understanding the OSI model and what protocols, right? Which equipment, which activities are going on at each of these levels, okay? Now, one thing that I'm not sure about, and I probably need to double check this, I don't know if they include the TCP IP model on this exam. I don't see it here. It's just the OSI model. And so anything that I don't see here in these objectives, I'm assuming it's not going to be part of this exam. And if it is, it doesn't count towards your grade, towards your final grade. So if that asks you a question about any concepts that aren't on these objectives anywhere, don't freak out. Just, you know, answer it the best as you can and keep moving. But it's not going to count towards your final grade. All right, Jeff is saying here that he did see known services and what actions rest on what OSI model. Yeah, that's something that I would expect because I see it right here, right? It's telling you right here, explain devices, applications, protocols, and services at their appropriate OSI model. So best place to start would be with that graphic, and then you can kind of go from there. Obviously, you got Jason's training. You got other resources that go into the OSI model at a deeper level, but just make sure that you understand that we're just talking about explaining, right? We just need to know what's going on. So if I ask you about a switch, or if I ask you about a router, if I ask you about TCP and UDP, right? Which layer are TCP and UDP operating at primarily? What's going on at the session layer, right? Things like that. What is the session layer responsible for? That's another thing that can be asked. So understand, first of all, be able to put these in order. There are a couple acronyms that you can use. One is please do not throw sausage pizza away. And this is going bottom to top. Okay, let me come over here this way and do it this way. All right. So going bottom to top, please do not throw sausage pizza away. And top to bottom is all people seem to need data processing. Okay, those are the two that I remember. I think I learned them from Professor Misher or something, but I still remember them. So this is stuff that I learned like probably 4 or 5 years ago. So yeah, I still remember it. So just find one that works for you. Once you can put them in order, make sure you understand what's going on at each level. And then once you get that, then start to put these together, right? Start to test yourself on, okay, which of these protocols are going on at each level, okay? And that's how you get that. Are you going to see a ton of stuff on the OSI model? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to see a lot. Probably maybe 3 or 4 questions. I don't know. You can ask Jeff, how many questions do you think that you saw on the OSI model, Jeff? More than 4? Dan says he's been taking notes on levels from SurfMaster material. SurfMaster is a great learning tool. It gives you explanations every time you get something wrong. So it doesn't just tell you that you got it wrong, it tells you why you got it wrong, and it tells you how to get it right the next time. So saying mainly the transport and up, the transport level and up. Right. So I mean, at that point, it's just about understanding. You know, come in here and the transport level. Obviously, you have your transport protocols. You got your TCP, you got your UDP, right? So that should kind of give that away. And then you got some of your, you got your secure sockets layer here, right? And then as you go up, you're talking about the session layer. The session layer is responsible for keeping your session alive. So when I connect to Google or I connect to LearnKey.com or wherever I make my connection to YouTube, right? The session layer is responsible for maintaining that connection, right? Keeping it going. If you're streaming something, right? Right, that's what the session's for. So, and then you got your, like your encryption type stuff, right? Going on at the presentation layer, right? Your encryption. So anyway, this kind of maps everything out for you. So this is, like I said, this is a good place to start. And then from there, you can just research like the levels individually to get more information. If you don't get enough from like Online Expert or Professor Messer, whoever you're using, that's when you can take to Google. Just Google the application there specifically and get as much information about it as you can. But like I said, don't drive yourself crazy because, I don't think that you're going to see too much on the OSI model. The last exam I took, I probably saw like 3 or 4 questions, and, that was about it. So networking goes a lot deeper than just the OSI model. This, like I said, it's more about troubleshooting than anything else, right? Fixing the problems with the networks and securing them as well. So, okay. Question. Yeah, I mean, they could ask you that too. You could get a matching question that just says, put these in order, right? I mean, that'll be a give me if you got the acting, the phrases down. So, another thing that people, they over complicate is subnetting, because it's hard to learn at first. It's not really hard to learn. It's just, it's like, it's abstract. It's foreign. It's like, what is this? And then once you learn it, it's pretty easy. But people spend a lot of time on it because it takes a while to get comfortable with it. But on this exam, you're not going to see a lot of it. Not on Net Plus. You're going to see. I mean, here's your subnetting. Right, it falls in one little subcategory in knowledge domain 1, right? So I mean, that should tell you right there, you're not going to see too much of it. You come up here, all right, 23% networking concepts, right? So that's a pretty decent percent. That means that just about 1 out of every 3 or 4 questions is going to be on networking concepts, but that's as a whole, right? It's not just, I mean, you can get questions from anywhere, right? If you get a question on subnetting, it's not going to be too many of them. You'll probably see 2 or 3, or maybe 4 at the most. So I tell everyone to, subnetting is not going to make you or break you on this exam. You better know how to do it if you're moving on to Cisco, because you're going to see a lot more of it there. But here, it's not going to make you or break you. It's just about, you're getting your introduction to it. And so, the stuff that you need to do for subnetting on this exam is basic. It's just, if they give you a department that needs a certain amount of devices, you need to know how to figure out the right subnet mask for that particular subnet. Or if they give you a IP address and say, okay, which subnet does this address fall in, right? You need to know how to determine that, right? What else?
Hey, Tristan.
Yeah.
Can I give an example of of one of the questions I saw yesterday about
Sure.
subnetting?
Don't be too specific. Don't be too specific though, because
Oh
we're
no no
recording.
oh no no I'm not going to be too specific. Um, they may say like put up a they may give you routers and say click on this and set up. It needs to be within this subnet to allow this many IP addresses. And in there, they also include the CIDR that you have to put in and everything else, so you have to be prepared for that. That's all I was gonna
Okay.
say. So, but I
Sounds
won't say
good.
anything more specific because I don't want to ruin it. So,
Right. Appreciate that. So yeah. And in some instances, they may ask you to pick the CIDR. They may say you need 60, you need 70 devices for the marketing department, right? Which slash are you going to pick? So,
Hey, Tristan.
if you, yeah, go ahead.
Professor Masters subnetting in 7 seconds. I wrote down the charts before I started my test. I learned how he did his thing, and I wrote down the
Mm-hmm.
charts. It really helped on those kinds of questions because then I could just look at the subnet and it lined up with the CIDR notation.
Absolutely.
If that makes sense. It saved so much time.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that. So let me show you what I do anytime I take a networking exam. It's kind of similar to what you just said. I haven't seen Professor Messer's subnetted in 7 seconds, but I heard good things about it. So this one right here, okay, this is my chart. This is one that I use. It makes sense to me. Okay, so if I'm taking any type of networking exam where I think there may be some subnetting on it or anything, what I do is I write this at the top. Okay, and what this does is this tells me, without having to do the math or anything, if they tell me that I need a certain amount of devices for a subnet or something like that, then I just use this chart. And then I don't have to waste my time, right? They say I need 70 devices, so okay, which one's going to give me 70 hosts? It's not going to be this one, so it's going to be a slash 25, right? 64 is not enough for 70. 64 is actually 62, but this isn't enough, so I have to move up to slash 25, okay? And as you can see, it just doubles. You can't use slash 32 because it's not a valid address. That's why it's not here, right? You have to have 2 parts to your IPv4 address. So you have to start slash 31. It's going to give you 2 addresses, no hosts, and then you just go from there. It just doubles, right? It's pretty simple. So just so you guys know, they're not going to give you something way down here, right? It'll be probably, this will be as far as it'll go, slash 23, right? So just make sure you have these ones down. Make sure that you understand that once you get past slash 25, when you go down to a slash 24, you're in the 3rd octet now. Okay, that's something that some people get confused because you're doubling, you're going this way. You're still doubling, but you have to understand that this is going to look different now because you're in the 3rd octet. So now, if you're in the 4th octet, right, only the last octet is changing, right? This is a bad way to explain this. Sorry about that. I'm using the old document that I did before. Let me find another one just to explain this just a little bit better. This one. Okay. So, right, we all know that there's 2 parts to your IP4 address, right? I don't need to explain that to anyone. That's something that everyone understands. If you don't, just let me know. So this is your 25th through 32nd bit, right? So as long as you're in the 4th octet, the only one that's changing, right, in your address up here is going to be this. This all stays the same, right? Once you go into that 24th, that size 24, now all of a sudden this is changing too. Okay, so just keep that in mind because that is something that some people get confused on. When you go from your 25th to your 24th octet, from your 25th to your 24th bit. Now, this third octet here is in play in a subnet mask. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's also a good way to determine, you know, someone tells you that you have a class C. Let's say that you have a typical class C address here, right? Which this is right here. And there's a question, and they're asking you about, you know, a valid address or something on that network. Well, you should know that this shouldn't be any different if it's class C, right? Because class C's, in a class C, the first three octets are always going to be the same, right? The only thing that's variable is everything over here in the fourth octet. So this should give you some indicators, right? They ask you a question about something in this subnet, and you look down in the answers and you see something that looks like this or something else, right? You can automatically throw those out because you know that this shouldn't be changing in the /24. Okay, so just a little FYI stuff there. Let's get out of here. Okay, so another area that I want to make sure everyone kind of takes serious is, we talked about it a bit already, your troubleshooting area right down here. What I want everyone to notice when you get down to troubleshooting, it's not just about you know, the troubleshooting itself. You have the steps here, right? Similar to A+, now these steps are actually, they can present it to you on A+ now. Before they updated to the 1000 series, this is the first place you would see these steps, but now they put them on the A+ exam, so that's definitely a good thing because you start troubleshooting in A+. So very important, I mentioned this yesterday in Security Plus session. Troubleshooting is not just about it's not just about troubleshooting with CompTIA. What they're going to do is they're going to place you in different parts of this process. Sometimes they're going to put you at the beginning. Sometimes they're going to put you in the middle, and they're going to say, you've already tried some things. What do you try next? Okay, so very important on those questions where you look down at the answers and all of them look right. They all look like something that could work. That's when you want to come back to the question and figure out where are you in this process. Okay, that's going to give you an indicator of what you should be looking at. So when you get down here to troubleshooting, one thing I want you to notice, you're going to see this. Every one of these sub-objectives are going to be scenario-based. Okay, they're going to give you some type of scenario. Something's happened, something's not working. You're getting calls from the employees saying that they can't reach the internet. Some employees, they can communicate with some computers, but they can't communicate with others, right? They're going to give you some type of a scenario. You're going to have to figure out either what's going on, or maybe you know what's going on and you need to the way to fix it, right? What's the fix to what's going on? So just be prepared when it comes to troubleshooting. Keep an open mind. Be prepared for anything, because you know they're going to throw a ton of stuff at you, and they're going to throw it at you in different ways. So just be prepared for it. It looks like they chopped this down a little bit, because I remember seeing a lot more on the previous exam. There's a lot more here. So it looks like they chopped it down, which is not a bad thing, actually. But, okay. If you don't mind me asking, I think it was Jeff, right? Can you just talk a little bit about your experience? You know, what you saw, what you feel that maybe you saw some stuff that you didn't study enough for, or maybe you don't feel like the training went in as much depth as it should have. Just like a brief summary.
Yeah, I guess again, just not going into details since I know. Pretty much what I saw was, like you said, there's a lot of scenarios. Like you're setting up a new network, and this is the configuration we want you to set it up and do it. And there's a lot of like hands-on in those scenarios, or they're like drag and drop everything, or they'll tell you this is the information we want you to configure a network and do it here. And then vast majority of it is exactly like Tristan says though, whereas like it gives the scenario saying you walk into this situation and what is this, or how do you do this, or it tells you if you're gonna test something, here's your readouts. Tell us how you get those readouts. And it is, and it goes from everything from tool usage for basic tools like probe generators and cable testers and everything, all the way into setting up antenna directions, and you can and signal strength control, CIDR, subnetting. There's a few of those. I mean, it's I'm trying to think what else. The training we've been given is pretty good. A lot of the areas that I was studying for, I found myself going up like MLPS and stuff, or MPLS.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even actually see that in the test at all. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're training for that isn't there. That'll probably help us down the road because I'm doing Cisco too. So, but it's as far as the test itself, I mean, it was just a lot of the hands-on. The ones that weren't hands-on actually were really easy questions for the most part, because I mean those were the easy ones. So when you don't see either a hands-on or a what-if scenario, that's a break.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it sounds like they haven't changed it much.
Yeah, I was really surprised by the how, because they really cover even from like very low basic level physical layer testing, and then they go through the whole gambit of different of everything and they do touch a little bit on cloud-based services and the organization and the difference of the kinds of clouds and the IaaS, the different platforms that cloud services offers. So make sure you do know that. That is one thing that we haven't really touched about. I should mention.
Okay, can you say that one more time?
Can I say it one more time?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They touch on cloud-based services. So you have to know which clouds, kind of like which clouds are what, and how different platforms support each other on the cloud services.
Right.
So I don't know. I know cloud services. I know cloud services are relatively new and changing into a lot of certification tests. There's a lot of that's the stuff changing. So just make sure you know the different kinds of clouds and the services they offer and how they work together, and then you'll be covered. I mean, there wasn't too many questions, but it was on there.
Okay.
Yes,
so
yes, Kelly.
Yeah, but for those of you that don't know what he's talking about the infrastructure, the platform, and the software as a service. Okay, you get your introduction to those in A+ if you've taken it. Okay, they actually, what they've done with this new series of A+ is they've moved that from the second exam. So on the 900 series, cloud computing was on the second exam. It was on the 902. Okay, what they've done with the 1000 series is they've actually moved that from the second exam to the first exam. So now you'll see that on the 1001 instead of the 1002. So if you're taking the 900 series, you'll see cloud computing on the second exam. If you're taking the 1000 series, you'll see cloud computing on the first exam. Okay, there's not a lot of it. I saw about 4 or 5 questions at the most on cloud computing. Okay, and it's really just about understanding for A+. At least it's about just understanding what they are, being able to put them in a category and saying, okay, this is what this does. This is the characteristics of it. Okay. I'm not sure. They're probably going to a little bit more detail here on this exam if they're repeating it. But like he said, there's not a lot of it. So I don't even know where that's. It should be under operations, right? What's up here? This is infrastructure. It should be here. So.
Am I coming through now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, I will say though that the example that I was given into it was a troubleshooting situation. So it added the extra confusion of having to read and figure out the way they wanted to word everything. So really make sure you have it down, because there's not a lot there, but they are a little bit they make you read and think for a second.
Really good point. Appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Okay, where are we at? One more thing that I want to bring up. I think it gets a little overlooked. Okay, now my experience with this is I saw a lot more of this. I actually learned this stuff more when I got to Cisco than I did going through Net Plus. But I just want to stress the importance of this because it's going to come up in this exam more than likely. Okay, the difference between broadcast domains and collision domains. Make sure you understand that. Okay, this is the time to get it now, especially if you're moving on to Cisco. Understand what this is doing, what you're doing with these, the significance of them, and also how to count these, right? How do you count a broadcast domain versus a collision domain? VLANs, understand what VLANs are. Okay, they actually tie in together. When you're creating another VLAN is another way of creating another broadcast domain. Okay, so it's just segmenting your network and making it more efficient. All right. Trunking. This is all. See, this stuff, if you understand the concepts of it, that's one thing. Understanding how to do it is another thing. This stuff you'll understand how to do once you get to Cisco. So for those of you that are moving on to more advanced networking, just understanding what these are and the importance of them, and it says it here, right? It's just explain the concepts. That'll be enough for here. When you get to Cisco, you're going to learn how to do all this stuff. You're going to know how to create more VLANs and put interfaces in it, and you're going to know how to trunk and port mirroring and spanning tree and all this stuff. You're gonna learn how to do all this stuff, how to configure it on a device. Your routing protocols, okay, your distance vector versus your link state. Again, you don't need to know how to configure OSPF and EIGRP and all this stuff. Just do your homework on it. Know which one of these fall into the distance vector category, which ones fall into link state. You're not going to get much on border gateway protocols. Just understand what it is. Okay, this is more of a you'll get into like AS, autonomous system, I believe. You'll get into these in Cisco, all right? So really what they're doing is they're giving you these concepts, but they're not making you put these into action yet. You just have to understand what they're about. And then when you get to Cisco, that's when you start really doing all this stuff. And that's when I really started understanding it more, when I started doing it. So that's why I'm telling you guys, since this is on this exam, make sure you do your homework on this stuff and understand the difference between, how your network is gonna operate if it's using a distance vector routing protocol versus link state, right? In which situation would you want to use a distance vector routing protocol versus link state and hybrid and all that stuff, okay? Hopefully by now you have static versus dynamic down. It's the same concept as DHCP, right? It's just like routing types. So in this instance, you're creating your own static routes instead of using the routing protocol, right? And then dynamic, obviously these are dynamic. So IPv6, I'm sorry. This is another thing that's becoming a lot more relevant now than it was when I was going through this stuff. So I didn't do a lot of stuff with IPv6, right? Just kind of the basic stuff, understanding the addressing, right? A valid address versus one that wouldn't be valid. Understanding how to truncate, right? How to take a huge IPv6 address and shrink it down into something that's not so huge, right? Understanding what dual stacking is, right? Dual stacking is just using, you're using both. If you go to your command prompt and you type in ipconfig, right, /all, make sure you get everything. I'm pretty sure you're gonna see IPv4 and IPv6 addresses in there, right, for your device. That's what dual stacking is. You just, you're using two addresses. You're using the IPv4 and the IPv6 address. But just don't overlook this stuff because it could be easy to do. Understand what NAT is versus PAT. And basically everything that's in these objectives. ACLs, you're not going to have to configure them. They are a pain when you get to Cisco. It's just, you need to know a ton of information, especially the extended ones. The standard ones are pretty simple, right? You're just blocking a certain thing. The standard ones are a little bit more tedious. And then also, like, once you get the ACLs, you have to apply them to the correct interface. And so, but, for now, just understand what they are and what they're used for. Okay? It's just understanding these concepts. But I know this is something that a lot of people kind of look over. So make sure you understand these, all right? Because more than likely you're gonna get questions on these. I'll give you an example of a question you can get. They can ask you if what's one way to improve the performance of your network, right? And they could throw create more broadcast domains and create more collision domains in there, right? You need to understand which one of those is actually better for the network, right? So doing your homework is definitely a must for this exam because Jeff he's not joking. It's a beast of an exam. It's a ton of information, and it takes what you learned about networking in the A+, and it takes it to the next level. So be prepared for it. Kelly says ACLs break your network if you met. Oh yeah, definitely. If you do it the wrong way, you can definitely mess it up, and you can easily do it. All you can do is just forget about the implicit deny, and you can lock everyone out of a network. Let's say that you want to restrict, or you want to allow something, right? You want to allow a certain subnet to access a server somewhere, right? And so you put the ACL in there to allow the subnet, and then you don't put anything else. You're forgetting about the implicit deny. So what that's going to do is it's going to deny everyone, right? You have to remember to allow everyone else. So that's one thing. Oh, that's another thing. Don't forget about the implicit deny because they'll ask you about that on Net Plus as well. I remember getting asked about that specifically on my last Net Plus exam. So when it comes to ACLs, always remember the implicit deny. If there's ever a problem where you set up an ACL and they're saying all of a sudden no one can connect to the internet or whatever, more than likely it's the implicit deny. All right. Okay, what else do we have here? Watch the video when Kelly got the answer to that question. Which video? Had a PAT question. Yeah, port address translation, right? It's another form of PAT. It's another form of NAT. But yeah, you can see it. So make sure you do your homework on it. EIGRP. Yeah, enhanced interior gateway protocol. So for the most part, you're going to see EIGRP if you're on large scale networks. Right. So for the smaller networks, you're probably going to be using RIP. More specifically, probably RIP version 2 or RIP version 3. This one's kind of phased out now. But so this is the one that you would use. This is the one that you use for like a SOHO, like a small office, home office, right? You use RIP. And then for a larger network, you would probably use OSPF or EIGRP, right? These scale a lot better. And so these are for, they're for better for larger networks. Understand that too. Which one of these are you going to use for which type of network? All right. What else do we have? Anything else?
Just a quick curiosity. Is it true that EIGRP is no longer Cisco proprietary?
That, you know what? I don't know. I haven't heard that, but it could very well be true. So what I can tell, like most of this stuff, like, okay, so the main difference between Net Plus and Cisco is, yeah, Cisco is more proprietary, right? Your Cisco exams are going to be more proprietary to Cisco. the fact that we're talking about this stuff in NetPlus, where NetPlus is more about the concepts, it's more open source. I wouldn't be able to tell. I'd have to do my homework on that. So I don't know, but it's possible. I know Cisco's kind of stingy. They like to keep their concepts and stuff to themselves. So I mean, I don't know. I haven't heard that though. Kelly's saying it's correct though.
Okay, well, I just looked it up. I guess I should have looked it up before I asked, but it said that Cisco submitted a portion of the EIGRP to the IETF for consideration as a potential standard, but the entire protocol has not been accepted as a standard and remains proprietary to Cisco.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't see Cisco letting go of. They're kind of like Apple. Apple has they have their thing, and they don't like to share. So, when you're making your decision there, Android obviously is more open source, and Apple's going to be kind of proprietary. And so, yeah, it makes sense. Jason mentioned in OLE. He probably did. He has a lot of FYI stuff. Okay. Which question was it, Jeff? Kelly gets all the answers right. She does her homework.
It was when you asked what was the best way to increase a network, and the answer was to create more broadcast domains.
Oh yeah, you're right. She did get that right.
Yeah, I just remember that one.
She said nope. I missed part one yesterday. Oh, you're keeping track, huh? No, Kelly's doing an awesome job. I think you could actually help a lot of people. You have a good understanding of a lot of the concepts. So that's really what it takes. When you understand this stuff at a deeper level than just scratching the surface, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Because I remember as a student going through this stuff like the first time, and it was just like, what? What is all this stuff? It was like foreign to me, especially subnetting. Like it took me probably, I don't know, a week and a half to 2 weeks just to kind of fully understand like what it is that I'm doing, the why behind it, the how, and all of that stuff. But once you get it down, it's like, okay, I get it now, right? You see something and you kind of get it. So try to do that. Like once you guys get this stuff, try to go to the next level, try to go past the surface, and you'll see, it'll make a lot more sense. You see these acronyms and you can spell them out without having to go down to the even the long ones, right? Like this one right here. When you can start to spell those out, you'll know that you've been doing your homework for a while. Okay. Any other you need to know? We spent 4 quarters in Cisco. Oh, well, there you go. That'll kind of help, right? All right. So we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other concepts or questions, concerns? Oh, I did forget to mention this. Logical versus physical. Make sure you understand that. All right. Does anyone need me to walk through that real quick? Are there any sample subnetting problems that you can give us for practice, or is there a resource? Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, NetPlus is difficult no matter how much experience you have. You know what the problem is? It's hard to figure out what they're asking you sometimes. And they give you, if all the answers were clear cut, this would be a lot easier exam with experience. But they throw you in these scenarios and then they give you all of these answers and they could all be right. And it's like, okay, well, which one do you want? And that's what the phrasing, right? It's the phrasing, like the way that they word the questions. because you're not really sure what they're getting at. And then the other thing is when they give you all those answers that could be right, it's like, okay, which one do you want? Because it's easy to get something wrong when there's so many answers that could actually work. So that's really the big draw. That's the big hurdle when it comes to CompT, is understanding like what they're asking and then knowing which one they want you to pick. Okay, so Michael, instead of using the practice ones that I have, because I do have some, and you can find them in the forum, right? There's just like little practice ones. The main resource that I would recommend to you would be Exam Compass. Okay, there's a subnetting section. It's just for subnetting, and my only thing is, what I would do is make sure you understand fully how to do everything, okay? Because there's 4 different type of questions that you can get. And so you just scroll down to Net Plus, and then you'll find the subnetting one right here, subnetting quiz. Only subnetting questions, okay? So there's 4 types of questions that you can get. We talked about a few of them. One, if they give you a specific amount of devices that need to be accommodated, you need to know how to determine which slash you're going to use. That's one type of question you can get. Another one is they can give you an IP address and say, which subnet is this IP address on? Okay? So you need to know how to figure that out. Another question that they can give you is they can give you a subnet and a subnet mask and ask you what's the first usable address, or they could ask you what's the last usable address, right? You always have to remember that when you're talking about a subnet, there's 2 excluded addresses, always, right? Let me come back to my document real quick. I think I still have it open, right? So when you look down here, you can see even though I have this amount of available addresses, I have another one down here that takes away 2, right? So there's always 2 excluded addresses, the first and the last. So when they ask you what's the first usable address, you have to remember to skip the first address. The first one isn't usable. That's the subnet ID. The last one is the broadcast address, and you can't use that one either. So if they ask you what's the last usable address, it's going to be the one before the last one, right? So for this one, they're asking just what I said, right? What's the last usable host IP address for? So here's your network, right? And here's your subnet mask. So you have to find out the range, and then you have to figure out, okay, what's the last address, and then the one before that is going to be your last usable. Okay, so you have to make sure that you know how to do all of these before you do this, because this isn't a teaching tool like CertMaster. CertMaster, you get something wrong, then they're going to spell everything out for you, and they're going to tell you how to do it and all that. This one just kind of tests if you know what you think you know. So before you come and do that in Exam Compass, make sure you understand how to do all that. And I think I will do a session, our next Net Plus session, I will cover how to do all of those. Okay? It's pretty simple. It's not as difficult as it may seem. Alrighty. So that's going to be it. Actually, we're at the end of the session. Great session, guys. A lot of great questions. A lot of good information. Exactly. Okay, so she has another big tip. Flag the simulations and come back to them. Yeah, that's the same thing that I do. I don't do those at first. I just flag them and I do them at the end. So. Okay. So Wayne is saying if you haven't taken A+ yet, you should take the Net Plus without any background in this. You're saying you should or you shouldn't? Or
I would just ask. I haven't had any background in this at all, and I was taking the Network Plus first. And hearing what you're saying now, I'm thinking, is this the right way to go?
Me personally, this is just a personal thing. If you have no background in networking, I would start with A+. Because like I said, and I can show you better than I can tell you, but
I I've gotten an A+ twice so far in my life, and it's amazing for helping just getting the basic knowledge because you go over a lot of the same stuff, and it breaks it up in 2 tests, so it helps you break up the knowledge rather than all at once into a beast.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the other thing, right? So you can see here, this is the first A+ exam, and it has 20% of this is going to cover networking, right? So this is, like I said, this is your introduction into networking. It doesn't go into extreme detail. Like you don't need to know how to subnet and all that. It's just you need to understand, right? What is a router? What's a switch, right? What's the access point? What's a repeater? What's a hub, right? You're just kind of getting your introduction into this stuff and IP addressing schemes and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, if you have no networking experience, I probably would stay away from that plus I'd probably try to take A+ first. Get your foundation for this stuff before you try to go in and take it. Because it's not, even though I mentioned earlier that this is like a beginner level exam, it's really not. It's just a beginner to networking exam. Like Cisco goes way deeper. It's like I said, like a lot of the concepts that you have to be able to characterize and that stuff, you have to be able to configure it and troubleshoot it in Cisco. So that's why I say it's a beginner exam, but it's really not.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll probably contact my counselor and try to switch over to doing the A+ first then.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, great session, guys. So this will be posted within the next day or two. I'm just going to go through and make sure that there's nothing that I need to edit out. I didn't hear Samuel L. Jackson this time, so we should be good. So it'll be up in a couple of days or so. But anyway, great session. Thank you all for attending. And I will be back next Tuesday with A+. So if you guys have any questions between now and then, you can email me, troberts@learnkey.com, or my extension is 139. All right. If you have to take off, I'm going to do the head count now, but if you have to take off, please just leave your name so you make sure you get credit for this session here. Thanks and goodbye.